quick update on the addition so far. Fortunately, we had the granite people come and we were able to get the granite all installed. I have to mount yet the tower, and so once the tower is mounted, then this backsplash, I can just go ahead and caulk that into place, and then I can prepare all the sinks. Yesterday, I was able to get this trim completed. And so downstairs in our old house from 1870, I don't know when they would have actually put it on, but they actually had this chair rail that they simply at the time, you know, maybe 1950, maybe 1900, I don't know. But they had this chair rail that they actually went ahead and just overlaid the existing trim. And so with that, I was able to have the knives made, and then we replicated this trim because no matter where I could go, I could not find this exact trim. And I know it's kind of difficult to actually see the profile, but it's actually a really nice trim, lots of shadows. Maybe if I look down here, maybe you'll get a sense of the profile. Sorry about that. Hang on. There we go. So you get a sense of the profile there. And it's a really nice profile. So we were able to get that. Trim all the way around. Basically just ending the trim that way where the tile goes before we get the tile shower in, or before we get the shower door in. Trim all the way around. Ended up having to just a bad placement for that particular supply line, and so I just simply was able to cut out the round of the trim and install it, and that should paint up just fine. It's behind a toilet, so not probably a big deal. Love these miter clamps. Thank you very much, Ron Paulk, for showing them in a video. And I was able to get several sets of them. And had an issue where the cabinet people, who they actually, for the price of the cabinets, they installed them for us. It was the Amish. And so with that, they actually put base. I was not here, so they put base on the cabinets already and left me a stick of base. So I went ahead and finished the base there and then tied it into our existing, or not existing, but our matching trim from the rest of the house there. Same thing down there. All the way up and around, because this stuff actually chases. So down to there, chases around the tub. Now that it's there, once Jen paints, I'll be able to actually put my tub supply in. So all the way around. And then, of course, it finishes there, where I had to do a profile. And it came out okay, where I had to take the profile out of the 1x10 that we used. It's cut down to 8 3/4. And then just wrapping the trim up rather than dyeing it into the face or the end of the cabinet. I just went ahead and did an end profile for that particular cabinet. So that'll caulk in fine down there, providing that it can be painted. And really happy with it. We still have shoe left to do, but this trim is already on the windows and has been painted once or twice, so it matches all the way around, just like downstairs. So we're very happy with that. Okay, there you go. 3.5 minutes of update. Because we have a lot of work to do in the laundry room, we're not going to trim anything out other than the windows, and I just put baseboard down to give it a finished look. But otherwise, this will wait for cabinets before we actually do anything in there more trim-wise. We have crown left to do, and I think that's it for the trim, and then it'll be a matter of... All right, good evening. Just a quick one. As far as doing crown today, I had the rig set up. I was done with almost all my cuts by probably sundown, and I had to come out for a few recuts, but I was able to cut all 17 crown pieces today. It's not a huge room, but man, every which way it goes. So anyway, 17 individual pieces. There were 3 double copes. By the way, I planned it out. It was just easier to do 3 double copes. And there were 4 other copes besides. There were 7 outside corners, 1 inside corner that I couldn't cope because it was like just a 7/16 jog. And so I had to do an inside miter, or an inside miter, so it worked out. Anyway, this is my station that I was using today. And if I come over here really quickly, I can probably get this light on. I wasn't planning on being out here, but So I've got this jig on my table, and on the table of my miter box. But basically what it does is it allows for your crown to just sit in there. So I don't know if I can, there we go, that's probably a little bit better. It just allows for the crown to sit in there, and it basically is just a crown stop. And then you set it in. I've got my cut list here, and then whether it's left or right or whatever, but I'm cutting upside down. Every time I set my crown in there, it's exactly where I need it to be as far as it's on the spring angle. So I was very happy with this. Built some time ago, last year actually, built a just one-sided table extension. Actually, I should have built a second one, but I didn't, and I did not have time today. So I basically just, made it all happen with that and just the regular extension here. So very, very happy with this jig. This jig looks a little bit different from the guy, I think Ron Paulk, that I got it offline or online from. But this has worked out just fantastic as far as being clamped down. And every time you just set it right in there, upside down, ready to go. Quick one. I always say that, just a quick one, and then it turns into be 20 minutes. This one will be brief, but I thought I would show, because I was breaking my saw down and just putting all the parts away. Here is that crown stop that I actually have. Basically just a long piece, depending on what kind of support you have on either side of your saw bed for your miter box, then these tails can actually be much longer than what I have. This just happened to fit the rig that I was using at the time. I made it once. I've used it several times. That's why you see a lot of cuts in there at different angles. It was originally just 90 and 245s, but they represent, and 22s actually. But I've used it a few times with a couple of different styles of crown, so that's why you see multiple cuts there. But basically, how this thing works, if this represents the saw, so if that's the saw, basically your saw fence for your miter box, what you do is you take your crown and you figure out, because you have to cut it upside down, you figure out what your spring line or your spring angle is. You don't actually have to know the angle. You just have to know when it rests against the wall and the ceiling. Which that would represent the wall. This would represent the ceiling when it's installed. You have to know that number right there. And you don't even actually have to know the number. You just have to know what that is. So, well, actually, you do have to know the number. I take that back. You do have to know the measurement. So once you're able to figure out when that is flush and plumb, then you would, what I did was I cut a piece of plywood, which is exactly the width of this line from there to there. And so that being said, I guess if I were to hold that up there, you'd see that that actually matches right up. So then, ran this through the table saw. It turned out to be 2.5 inches, by the way. You would take this and you would set that against your miter box fence. So again, this is your miter box. So set that against your fence. And then you would simply take this. I happen to actually have just a cut mark on this one. And so I would line that up with my center cut mark. If this were fresh and I had no cuts at all, I would just pick the center of whatever my bed is here. This actually projects outwards. I've seen them square and other shapes. It wants to be long enough or deep enough this way, or when you bring your blade down from your miter box, that you don't actually cut this in half. So if this whole thing were just this wide, then obviously the first cut it would be cut in half, and then it wouldn't actually function as necessary. So that's why this is the way it is, and I just happen to do it in a semicircle because my miter box, the DeWalt, has that, of course, semicircle. So anyway, basically you would just set your spring angle guide, so your crown stop guide in there. This then gets pushed up into clamp, make sure it's tight, and then this simply just comes out. Once it comes out, and then you take your crown, of course you install your crown upside down. This is just, I guess, colonial. And then when this sits in there, every time you put a piece of crown in here, it actually will set exactly the way you need to set it in order to cut anything that you need to cut. Plumb cuts, not so much of a, or straight cuts, butt cuts, not so much of a big deal. But if you're on any of the angles, 45, 22, 45, 22, inside, outside, it's just a really nice set it and forget it. Every once in a while, I do actually take and insert this back in just to make sure that it actually is still, nothing's moved. and providing that nothing is moved, I'm good to go. So anyway, there is the crown stop. I do actually have the DeWalt crown stops, and I like this way better. It just has a little bit more functionality, and when I clamp it down, the thing doesn't move, and it's just out of the way, and I can trust it. Crown stop that I used adapted from Ron Paulk, and it might be his original design, or he may have adapted his from somebody else. So there you have it. Thank you very much. All right, well, here's the coping station that I set up. I was watching a few of Ron's videos today as far as just looking for a faster way to do crown, because I had so much of it to do. It wasn't like it was tons of lineal feet, like I had 16-foot pieces laying on the ground ready to install in an entire house. It was just a volume of pieces that went from 142 inches down to 7/16 of an inch. So as I was watching the videos, I had the jigs already made as far as the installation jig and of course the crown stop. But they also, and this was not original to Ron. He actually cited wherever it's like Gary Katz's Roadshow, I believe. And basically it was a jig that held crown in its installed state. So basically your crown would install there. This would be the wall. That would be the ceiling, and then this is what you would do as far as with your cope. Then when you go to cope this, and this would actually be way out here. I just had a short piece to show you, otherwise it'd be like projected way out here. But basically what you do then is, as you cope this, then you're coping actually on the plumb, as opposed to having to angle your saw, you know, on that almost 45-degree angle. That it actually is a little bit easier to do, and that allows you to use your Collins coping foot, which I learned today. As the first time I did it. I used it for probably 3/4 of my copes, and you know, I've got to get comfortable with it. You know, I really should have practiced first, but I learned, and I had a good time with it. So anyway, they had actually a box all prepared that you could actually clamp down. I did not have time to make that box, and so I just clamped a couple of 2x4s in place on the spring angle. And then I was able to get my piece way out here, and I was able to, whether I used a coping saw or whether I used the Collins coping foot, it worked out really well. So just on the fly, there you go. That was kind of a neat way to do it, as opposed to laying it flat. If I laid it flat, I don't know if I would have been able to really use that very well. I could have certainly cut it with a coping saw flat, but this way it was much easier to use that coping foot, and I could actually use the coping saw as well. So there you go. Just a quick one showing my setup for today. Now I've got to clean up because it's getting late. Take care. Stay safe. So here's the doorway that was actually just a wall, and my daughter was on the other side from the addition when we could actually get through like the stud cavities, and pushed the wall in, and it fell right down there. Now it's a lot different. So we have all the trim on now, which mimics the trim in the existing room, which was put on 15 years ago. And in here, new crown up, windows all trimmed out and ready to go. And we have tall base, corner blocks, just because in this room, or in the original trim, I excuse me, wanted to do corner blocks and rosettes, so I really just kind of decked it out all the way around. So, and then what we have down here is we have a base cap and then a 2-stack shoe. One is a piece of like 1.5-inch lattice behind, and then it's, I believe, colonial window stop that we're using as a shoe down there. And then all of that just tying into the corner blocks, again, just because it was what I did 15 years ago and had a good time with it. And now I have to replicate it and realize that it's just it's more cuts. Old window repurposed, and looks just like it used to when it was on the other wall. And the other wall, or the location for the window, used to be right there. Making progress, folks, making progress. To wrap up the crown, I thought I would actually show the crown. So, crown started right up there with our tower. And so tower to the vanity, I've got to do a little bit of trim at the base of the tower. That came pre-finished, and that'll happen tomorrow night. But in any case, there's the crown, so a couple of outside miters. And it's a 2-part crown, so you have like an upside-down base molding. And then you have a crown itself, which is a standard colonial, but both the base that's applied and the crown were actually made by the Amish, and so it's all solid poplar and kind of a bear to cope. So anyway, into the corner, that is a double cope. Then over around here, and then because of the tile, I ended up with this small kind of 1/2-inch jog, I guess, 7/16 jog or something like that. On and through to the bathroom, or at the stand-up, the walk-in shower. The door comes in later this week. Out here to the outside miter. All the way in through the toilet cubby. That right there is a double cope. And as a matter of fact, that was a double cope as well. Just, it was easier to run it and pressure fit them. So then we have outside miter. On into there. This piece here was supposed to be the last piece, and that is a double cope. And then, sorry about the light there, just hung that light about 10 minutes ago. Then over there, and then the long piece, which was 142 inches, that goes all the way back to the beginning, and that was not the last piece actually, but so there is that. Everything in here is trimmed, with the exception of I have shoe molding to do on the base. Otherwise, down here on the base, everything is good to go, with the exception of the shoe and this chair rail, which is it's an old chair rail. Here's the profile, actually. Right there, just to give it an idea of what it looks like. There you are. And with that chair rail, it was unique to the house when we bought the house. Some of the downstairs was actually, the trim was chased with all of this. And so we had the Amish go have knives made, and they custom cut several, I don't know, a few hundred feet for us. So we were able to do that.